The orbital shipyards of New Carthage buzzed with activity, a chaotic ballet of welding torches and maneuvering thrusters. Rust-streaked hulls floated in the zero-gravity docks, their patchwork plating held together by exposed wiring and sheer human stubbornness. The USN Scavenger's Pride hung like a battered sentinel among them, its mismatched armor panels glowing dull orange under the repair drone's cutting lasers. Chief Engineer Lisa Hayes floated near the frigate's starboard nacelle, her magnetic boots keeping her anchored to the hull. She wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her glove, leaving a smudge of grease across her brow. Another day, another miracle, she muttered, slapping the hull plating. The metal rang hollow, a sound that would have sent any alien engineer into panic. To Lisa, it was music. A shadow fell across her work. 3 figures approached in the weightless silence, their sleek environmental suits a stark contrast to her grease-stained coveralls. Overseer Krell of the Vorac Inspection Authority led the group, his 4 jointed limbs moving with practiced grace in 0G. Behind him, 2 Zeperian tech advisors hovered, their faceted eyes scanning the Scavenger's Pride with visible disdain. Krell's translator emitted a series of clicks before resolving into galactic common. "This is what passes for a warship in your fleet." His voice dripped with amusement as he wrapped a clawed hand against the hull. A loose panel vibrated ominously. Lisa smirked, pushing off the hull to face them. "She's got character." One of the Zeperians, a lithe female with iridescent scale patterns, drifted closer to examine a cluster of exposed conduits. "These power relays are outdated by 3 generations," she said, her voice laced with disbelief. "And this patching here, is that actual terrestrial duct tape?" "Reinforced carbon fiber tape," Lisa corrected cheerfully. "Holds better than your plasma welds in a radiation storm." Krell's mandibles twitched in what might have been a laugh. "Your optimism is charming, human. But these vessels are relics. The Federation expects proper warships for the Rim Defense Coalition." He gestured toward the observation deck, where newer alien ships gleamed under the station lights. "Not scrap heaps." Lisa's smile didn't waver as she tapped her wrist console. Somewhere deep in the Scavenger's Pride, a reactor hummed to life. The ship shuddered, then stabilized as ancient stabilizers compensated. "Shall hold her own," Lisa said. The Zeperian female exchanged glances with her companion. "Your confidence is misplaced. These ships wouldn't survive a single engagement with proper vessels." Behind them, a human work crew floated past, hauling a salvaged plasma cannon tethered to a thruster pack. One of the men, a grizzled tech with a cybernetic eye, saluted Lisa. "Got that Pyrian emitter working, Chief. Had to rewire the whole damn thing. But shell punch through shields like butter now." Krell's antennae stiffened. "That's illegal salvage." Lisa shrugged. "Salvage is just recycling with better stories." She pushed off toward the airlock, leaving the inspectors staring at the jury-rigged weapon. "Come on, Overseer, let me show you our pride and joy." Inside the Scavenger's Pride, the corridors were narrow and poorly lit. The walls a maze of exposed pipes and hand-painted warning signs. Krell had to duck under a low-hanging coolant line, his exoskeleton scraping against the ceiling. "This is a death trap," he muttered. "Only for the claustrophobic," Lisa said, leading them toward engineering. The heart of the ship was a symphony of controlled chaos. Human engineers worked elbow to elbow in the cramped space, shouting over the din of machinery. A young ensign balanced precariously on a makeshift scaffold, welding a cracked plasma conduit. Sparks rained down, forcing the Zeperians to step back. Lisa patted a massive rust-streaked cylinder dominating the center of the room. Mark 7 fusion core pulled her out of a decommissioned mining barge. Krell's faceted eyes widened. That design was retired for instability issues. "Yeah," Lisa grinned. "Turns out if you remove the safety limiters, she makes one hell of a surge weapon." One of the Zeperians, the quieter male, edged closer to inspect the reactor, His scanner chirped urgently. These readings are impossible. The containment field shouldn't be able to. A loud bang echoed through the ship, followed by cursing from the corridor. A moment later, a grease-streaked mechanic stumbled into engineering, clutching a smoking component. "Sorry, Chief, the port side buffer overloaded again." Lisa sighed, plucking the burnt out part from his hands. "Third time this week. Guess we're going with the backup plan." She turned to Krell, holding up the charred piece. "See, planned redundancy." The Vorac overseer stared at her, his antennae twitching in agitation. "You humans are insane. This vessel is a collection of accidents waiting to happen." Lisa tossed the broken component into a nearby recycling bin, where it clattered against a dozen identical failures. "Funny thing about accidents," she said, wiping her hands on her pants. "Sometimes they happen to the other guy, outside the viewports." The Scavenger's Pride's thrusters fled to life, shaking the entire docking frame. Somewhere in the distance, an alarm began to wail. Krell backed toward the exit, his usually impeccable posture faltering. "This inspection is concluded. The Federation will hear of this travesty." Lisa waved as they retreated. "Tell them we said hi." The moment the airlock sealed, the engineering crew burst into laughter. The ensign dropped down from his scaffold, shaking his head. Lisa pulled a hidden panel from the reactor housing, revealing pristine modern components beneath the rust. Hook, line, and sinker. She patted the ship's bulkhead affectionately. "Let them think we're flying junk, right, old girl?" The Scavenger's Pride shuddered again, this time with what almost felt like anticipation. The Galactic Council chambers on Cententrum shimmered with projected star maps and fleet formations, the air thick with the scent of ionized ozone from holographic displays. Admiral Ryan Blake stood at attention before the circular tribunal platform, his dress uniform crisp against the flowing robes and biomechanical suits of the Federation delegates. His jaw tightened as High Arbiter Vexis, a towering Zepyrian with iridescent scales, dismissed the latest human petition with a flick of his clawed fingers. "Your vessels are relics," Vexis declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. The hologram behind him displayed side-by-side comparisons, a sleek Zepyrian dreadnought, its hull smooth as liquid metal, next to the blocky patchwork frame of the USN Scavenger's Pride. The Rim Defense Coalition cannot risk integrating ships that belong in a museum, let alone a battlefield. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. A Vorac admiral, his carapace gleaming under the chamber lights, leaned forward. "Our scans show your ships lack proper shielding. Your weapons are decades behind standard, and half your systems appear held together by... What is that primitive binding material?" He tapped a claw against the hologram, zooming in on a section of the Scavenger's Pride, where duct tape visibly secured a coolant line. Blake didn't flinch. "Adaptability is our shield. Ingenuity is our weapon." He tapped his datapad, pulling up footage from the last pirate incursion, a human freighter, its hull scorched and venting atmosphere, somehow still firing back with jury-rigged point defense guns. "We don't need pristine hulls to win." Vexis exhaled through his nasal slits, a sign of impatience. "Winning against scavengers and raiders is one thing. The Vorac swarm fleet, the Zepyrian battle moons." The hologram shifted to show the Federation's might, thousands of warships, each capable of glassing a planet. "Your ingenuity will mean nothing when faced with real power." Blake's comb beeped. A message from Lisa Hayes flagged urgent. He glanced at the preview, a single line, "Phase 2 ready, let them laugh." He allowed himself the smallest smirk before locking eyes with Vexis. "With all due respect, High Arbiter, you're judging our ships by your standards. That's your first mistake." The chamber erupted in whispers. A Cerulean delegate, her floating sensory orbs pulsing with amusement, chimed in. And what standards should we use, Admiral? The standard of… what was it your engineer called it? Duct tape and spite. Laughter filled the room. Blake waited for it to die down before speaking again, his voice calm but edged with steel. The standard of results. Deny us the coalition seat if you wish. But when the swarm comes, and they will, you'll remember this moment. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and High Arbiter. That primitive binding material you mocked, it's rated for hard vacuum, extreme temperatures, and radiation. Your advanced sealants fail after 6 months in deep space. Ours last decades. He tossed a roll of duct tape onto the tribunal floor. A gift. Maybe your engineers can learn something. The chamber fell silent as Blake strode out, the heavy doors sealing behind him. Outside his aide, Lieutenant Chen fell into step. Sir, the Zeperians will… already calling for sanctions, I know. Blake activated his wrist comm, pulling up the latest fleet readiness reports. Alert the Mars dry dock, full production on the Defiance class, and get me a secure line to Captain Morrison. Chen hesitated. Admiral, are we really going to war with the entire Federation? Blake stopped walking, turning to face the observation window where Cententrum's artificial sun cast long shadows across the city below. No, Lieutenant, we're going to war for it. He tapped his comm. Morrison, it's Blake. Remember that little trick Hayes cooked up with the reactor overloads? Time to show the galaxy why they should have taken our scrap seriously. 2 systems away, aboard the USN Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison grinned at the transmission. Behind him, his crew was already scrambling to action, welding torches flaring as they bolted salvaged Vorac pulse cannons onto the ship's battered hull. About damn time, Admiral. What's the play? Blake's voice was ice. The Zeperians just declared our ships unfit for battle. Let's prove them wrong. Take your squadron to the Tarkis belt. Intel says a swarm scout fleet is sniffing around there. Show them what human scrap can do. Morrison cracked his knuckles. With pleasure. He turned to his XO. Sound general quarters. And tell engineering to prep the party favors. We're going hunting. As the Defiance's klaxons blared, Blake closed the channel and stared at the holographic star map in his quarters. The Federation's borders glowed a serene blue, the human colonies marked in defiant red, small, outgunned, outnumbered. He zoomed in on the Tarkis belt, where Morrison's squadron would soon meet the swarm. First blood's on you, Vexis, Blake murmured, but the last, that's ours. He opened a fleet. Wide channel, his voice carrying to every human ship from Mercury to Pluto. All vessels, this is Admiral Blake. The Federation has made its choice. Now we make ours. Battle stations. Humanity goes to war. Somewhere in the void, the Scavenger's Pride powered up its thrusters, its patchwork hull humming with hidden potential. Lisa Hayes patted a bulkhead like it was a racehorse about to run. All right, old girl. Time to show them what recycled really means. The Vorac raider fleet dropped out of warp like a pack of predators circling wounded prey. Their sleek black hulls gleamed under the distant red giant's light, predatory sigils glowing along their dagger-shaped prows. The human convoy, 3 battered freighters and their lone escort, the USN Defiance, looked like easy targets. Captain Jake Morrison leaned forward in his command chair, fingers drumming on the armrest. The Defiance was a patchwork nightmare of scavenged plating and exposed wiring, her thrusters held together by faith and welding seams. To the Vorac, she must have looked like floating debris. Captain, Lieutenant Cho called from sensors. 6 Raider-class vessels moving to intercept. They're powering weapons. Jake grinned. Right on schedule. On the view screen, the lead Vorac ship hailed them. The alien commander's scaled face appeared, his slit, pupilled eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "Human vessel," he hissed. "Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and we'll reduce your pathetic scrap heap to atoms. Jake scratched his stubble. See, that is the thing about scrap, he said casually. Sometimes it bites back. He cut the transmission before the Vorac could reply. The raiders opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked toward the Defiance, and the bridge crew braced. But the shots impacted harmlessly against the ship's mismatched armor plating. Sparks flew, but the hull held. Armor absorption at FAY. Chief Engineer Lisa Hayes reported over comms. Told you those old reactor shielding panels would come in handy? Jake nodded. All right, let's give our guests a proper welcome. Activate the party favors. Deep in the Defiance's belly, a series of jury-rigged capacitors whined to life. The Vorac ships closed in, confident now, until the human vessel suddenly flared with a blinding pulse of electromagnetic energy. Weapons systems went dark. Engines sputtered. What in the void was that? The Vorac commander screamed as his bridge plunged into emergency lighting. On the Defiance, Jake watched the chaos unfold. That, he said, was a microwave transformer, 3 fusion batteries, and a whole lot of spite. He turned to tactical. Lieutenant, warm up the main gun. The Defiance's so-called main gun was a repurposed mining laser reinforced with stolen alien cooling rods. It shouldn't have worked. It definitely shouldn't have punched clean through a Vorac shield grid. But as the Raider's starboard engine exploded in a fireball, theory became reality. 2 other Raiders tried to flank the human ship. Their targeting systems, still scrambled from the EMP, sent shots wildly off course. One bolt even struck another Vorac vessel by mistake. Captain, Cho said, the freighters are clear. Should we disengage? Jake studied the tactical display. 3 Raiders remained, but they were floundering, their usual precision attacks reduced to panicked flailing. He tapped his comm. Chief, how is our little surprise coming? Lisa's voice crackled back. Reactors primed. Just say the word. Jake leaned back. Vorac always attack in packs, he mused. Never occur to them that sometimes the prey wants to be surrounded. He opened a channel to the remaining Raiders. Hey, Scale Face, you wanted our cargo. Here is a free sample. He nodded to tactical. The Defiance's core went critical. The Vorac had just enough time to realize their mistake before the human ship's overloaded reactor unleashed a miniature sun between them. The blast wave tore 2 Raiders apart instantly. The third, its hull breached, spun helplessly toward the system's gravity. Well, aboard the dying Vorac flagship, the commander stared at the burning wreckage of his fleet. What kind of madman, he whispered, build ships to explode on purpose? The Defiance's escape pod, the only part of the ship not rigged to blow, shot clear of the destruction. Inside, Jake Morrison adjusted his cap and opened a channel to the freighters. Convoy secure, he said. You're welcome. One of the freighter captains, an old spacer named O'Reilly, laughed over the comm. Damn, Jake, that is the 3rd ship you've lost this month. Jake shrugged. We'll find another one. He glanced at the retreating Vorac wreckage. And I think we just got ourselves a new recruiting pitch. In the distance, the last Vorac ship's distress beacon pulsed weakly. No one answered. Back at New Carthage Station, the reports would later call it a miracle victory. The Federation analysts would scratch their heads over how a single junk cruiser took out 6 modern raiders. But in the escape pod surrounded by cheering crew, Jake just smirked. They call it recycling, he said. We call it Tuesday. The orbital dry docks above Mars buzzed with activity. A chaotic ballet of welding torches and maneuvering thrusters. Lisa Hayes floated between the skeletal frames of half-built warships, her magnetic boots clicking against the hull of the USN Bastion. The ship looked like a junkyard nightmare, patched armor plates from 3 different alien species, exposed wiring snaking across its surface, and a main cannon that had clearly been salvaged from a decommissioned Superior freighter. Chief, you sure this'll hold together? asked Ensign Reavers, his face smeared with grease as he wrestled with a plasma conduit. Lisa smirked, slapping the hull with her wrench. Kid, if duct tape and prayers got us through the last war, this beauty'll sail just fine. Around them, hundreds of similar ships took shape, ugly, asymmetrical, bristling with jury-rigged weapons. The Bastion was just one of dozens in the new scrap armada, each one designed to look like a barely functional wreck. A comms officer floated over, her face tight with tension. Chief, we've got a problem. Federation recon drones just pinged our perimeter. They're watching. Lisa's grin widened. Good, let 'em see. On the bridge of the stealth observation vessel Silent Blade, Superior Intel Officer Vexel stared at the holographic feed in disbelief. The human shipyards were a nightmare of mismatched parts and crude welds. Yet somehow the vessels moved with purpose. These can't possibly be combat-ready, muttered his Vorac counterpart, Warlord Kraz. Look at that one. Its starboard thrusters are held together by cables. Vexel zoomed in on a particularly ragged cruiser, the US Ingenuity. Its hull was pockmarked with what looked like battle damage, but something wasn't right. Wait, those scars are painted on. A chill ran through his exoskeleton. He tapped into the ship's internal schematics, stolen from a human database weeks ago, and cross-referenced them with the live feed. His mandibles clicked in horror. By the void. Kraz snarled. What? Vexel turned, his voice hollow. They're not broken. They're designed to look like this. Lisa floated into the command center of the dry dock, where Admiral Blake stood over a holographic star map. Sir, we've got confirmation. The Fed spies took the bait. Blake didn't look up. How long until they report back? Already did intercepted their transmission. They're screaming about deception tactics to the Council. A rare smile touched Blake's lips. Good, let them panic. Lisa crossed her arms. You realize they're going to call us insane, right? No species in the Federation builds ships to look weak. Blake finally met her gaze. That is why it'll work. On the Silent Blade, Vexel frantically compiled his report. The humans weren't just recycling scrap, they were weaponizing it. Their ships were meant to appear derelict, luring enemies into underestimating them. Worse, their patchwork armor was layered with energy dispersing composites, their exposed wiring deliberately rerouted to prevent critical system failures. Kraz slammed a clawed fist into the console. This is madness. They're violating every principle of starship design. Vexel's voice was quiet. No, they're rewriting them. Back in the dry dock, Lisa supervised the final touches on the Bastion. A team of engineers welded a salvaged Vorac shield generator onto the hull, laughing as sparks flew. Chief, you ever think the Feds are right? Asked Reavers, wiping sweat from his brow. I mean, this does look insane. Lisa patted the shield generator. Kid, insanity's just what the enemy calls tactics they don't understand. She pointed at the generator. See this, Vorac tech? We ripped it off one of their wrecks after the Defiance blew its core. Now it is ours. Reavers blinked. Wait, that is from the battle last month. Yep, and by next week, it'll be strapped to 20 more ships. She grinned. They call it scrap. We call it evolution. The Silent Blade retreated at full burn, its crew shaken. Vexel's report was already en route to the Federation Council, but he knew it wouldn't matter. The humans had played them all. Kraz snarled at the retreating shipyards on the view screen. They're mocking us building warships from our own wreckage. Vexel said nothing. He was too busy calculating how many fleets would die before the Federation admitted its mistake. Lisa watched the stealth ship vanish into the void, then keyed her comm. Admiral, they're running just like you said. Blake's voice crackled back. Then it is time, signal the fleet. Across the dry dock, engines flared to life. The Bastion, the Junkhammer, and 100 other scrap ships powered up, their true capabilities hidden beneath layers of deception. Lisa tightened her grip on the wrench. All right, boys and girls, let's show the galaxy what real recycling looks like. The Vorac armada filled the void like a swarm of locusts, their sleek black hulls glinting with the reflected light of distant stars. Hundreds of warships formed an impenetrable wall between the human fleet and the Vorac homeworld. Admiral Blake watched the tactical display aboard the USN Atlantica, his fingers steepled under his chin. The alien ships outnumbered them 10-1. Status report, Blake said, his voice calm. Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared on the comm screen, his bridge lit by flickering emergency lights. Reactors at Fay and climbing, Admiral. We've got maybe 20 minutes before she goes critical. He grinned. Just like we planned. Across the fleet, similar reports came in. The human ships weren't just damaged. They were designed to fail. Every overloaded power core, every jury-rigged system, every patchwork armor plate had been calculated for this moment. The Vorac Admiral's sneering face appeared on the main view screen. His 4 eyes narrowed as he took in the battered human fleet. Pathetic, he hissed. You come to our home with this. Your ships are falling apart before we even fire. Blake leaned forward. Oh, we're aware. The Vorac Admiral barked an order off. Screen, destroy them. Leave no survivors. The alien fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced toward the human ships and splashed harmlessly against their patchwork hulls. Scavenged plating from a dozen different species absorbed the blasts, dispersing the energy in crackling showers of sparks. Morrison whooped over the comm. They're using standard pulse cannons, just like we predicted. Blake allowed himself a small smile. The Vorac had grown complacent. Their weapons were designed to penetrate advanced alloys, not layers of mismatched scrap metal. All ships, Blake ordered, execute scorched earth protocol. The human fleet charged, not away forward, straight into the heart of the Vorac formation. The aliens hesitated, their targeting systems confused. No sane species would ram a superior force. Then the USN Defiance detonated. Its overloaded reactor went critical in a silent, sun-bright explosion. The shockwave rippled outward, frying the electronics of every Vorac ship within 50 kilometers. Their shields flickered and died. Morrison's laughter crackled over the comm. Oops, guess we forgot to mention, our reactors don't just fail, they explode. One by one, the human ships began their death runs. The USN Phoenix slammed into a Vorac battleship, its hull splitting open to release a cloud of molten shrapnel. The USN Vanguard spun wildly, its thrusters firing erratically, until it collided with an alien carrier, both vessels vanishing in a fireball. The Vorac Admiral's face reappeared, his earlier confidence gone. You're insane. No species sacrifices their own ships like this. Blake stood, his hands clasped behind his back. We don't consider it a sacrifice. We call it recycling. The USN Atlantica shuddered as its reactor reached critical. Alarms blared. Crew members strapped themselves in, grinning. They'd known this was a one-way trip, Admiral, Morrison said, his voice suddenly serious. It has been an honor, Blake nodded. Likewise, Captain. The Atlantica plowed into the Vorac flagship. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world turned white. The explosion lit up the void for thousands of kilometers. When the glare faded, the Vorac flagship was gone. Half their fleet drifted powerless, their systems fried by the EMP. The rest scrambled to retreat. On the bridge of the last surviving human cruiser, Lisa Hayes watched the tactical feed and laughed. They're running from us. Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the comm. He transferred to a backup ship at the last second. Told you duct tape would win the war. Blake's final transmission reached every human ship. All vessels pursue at will. Let's show them what scrap can really do. The remaining human ships, battered, burning, held together by hope and welded metal, lurched after the fleeing Vorac. The aliens had come expecting an easy victory. They got a slaughter. The holographic war table flickered as another Vorac dreadnought icon turned red, then vanished. High Arbiter Vexis watched the tactical display with mounting horror, her 4 hands gripping the polished edge of the projection table until her knuckles turned pale blue. Around her, the Federation's highest-ranking military leaders shouted over each other in a dozen different languages, their voices rising in panic. Impossible! Admiral Krell of the Vorac fleet slammed a clawed fist down, cracking the table's surface. Those human ships should have been space dust hours ago. Look at them. Half their hulls are missing. Their reactors should be critical. The display zoomed in on the USN Defiance. The junk cruiser listed badly to port, entire sections open to vacuum. Yet its weapons still fired with terrifying precision. Secondary explosions rippled along its spine, but the ship kept moving, kept fighting. "That is the 7th capital ship we've lost," whispered Commander Trellix, her Zephyrian antennae quivering. "They're using their own damaged vessels as battering rams. Who fights like this?" The doors hissed open, and a junior officer rushed in, his breathing apparatus fogging with each panicked breath. "Report from the Vorac homeworld perimeter, the human fleet. They've broken through the last defensive line." Vexis felt her secondary heart skip a beat. "How? We outnumber them 20 to 1. The officer swallowed hard. "The Atlantica Arbiter. It wasn't retreating when it seemed damaged earlier. It was lining up a ramming vector on the Vorac flagship." Silence fell across the war room. On screen, the last moments of the Vorac flagship played in slow motion. The massive human cruiser trailing atmosphere and debris like a comet, plowing straight into the alien ship's bridge at full burn. The explosion had vaporized both vessels and 3 nearby escorts. Admiral Krell's voice came out strangled. "They sacrificed their own." "Not sacrificed," Vexis corrected, her voice hollow, calculated. "Look at the tactical readouts. Every damaged human ship that broke formation was maneuvering to maximize collateral damage when destroyed." A new alert blared across the displays. The remaining human ships, barely 30% of their original number, had formed up around the UESN Scavenger's Pride. The battered frigate's comms lit up across all frequencies. "This is Admiral Ryan Blake to Federation High Command." The human's voice crackled with static but carried undeniable authority. "Your fleet is in tatters. Your homeworld defenses are breached. We're transmitting surrender terms." Krell snarled, slamming his communicator. "You dare? Your pitiful fleet is on its last legs." A new voice answered. Captain Jake Morrison, his tone darkly amused. "Last legs, Admiral. Half our ships are held together by prayers and welding torches on a good day. You really think we care about last legs?" The comms cut to a live feed from the Scavenger's Pride's bridge. Engineers scrambled across exposed deck plating, sealing ruptures with what appeared to be standard issue duct tape. One crew member waved cheerfully at the camera as sparks showered around him. Vexis felt ill. They're enjoying this." On screen, Blake leaned forward. "Hi, Arbiter. You made 2 critical mistakes. First, you assumed our ships were weak because they looked weak." He gestured to his crumbling bridge. "Second, you forgot that humans have been winning wars with inferior equipment since we were throwing rocks at each other." Morrison chimed in, grinning. "You wanted to fight a war of attrition against a species that perfected making do. Bad call." The tactical officer suddenly gasped. "Arbiter, long-range scanners detect." Vexis didn't need the report. The display lit up with new contacts emerging from warp. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Each one broadcasting the same crude human identification codes. "Reinforcements," Trellix whispered. Blake's smile turned predatory. "Oh no, Commander. Those are our scrapyards. Every decommissioned hull, every half-built prototype, Every salvaged wreck we could strap engines to. The new ships appeared on screen, an even more ramshackle collection than the first fleet, some barely recognizable as spacecraft. Turns out when you spend centuries treating war machines as disposable, you build up quite the inventory. Krell's claws scraped against the table. This is madness. Those aren't warships. They're improvised explosive devices with delusions of grandeur. Morrison offered cheerfully. Yeah, we get that a lot. Vexis closed her eyes. The math was undeniable. Even if the Federation destroyed every human ship here, the cost. She opened a direct channel. Admiral Blake, what are your terms? The human admiral leaned back, the image flickering as another power surge rocked his ship. Simple, full membership in the Rim Defense Coalition, equal voting rights on the Federation Council. He paused. And unlimited access to your scrapyards. We've got ideas. In the background, Chief Engineer Lisa Hayes could be heard laughing. Oh, you'll love this next part. We call it Operation Junkyard Dog. The transmission ended around the war table. Not a single alien commander could meet another's gaze. The silence stretched until Trellix finally voiced what they all knew. We've been outplayed by creatures who treat warships like disposable tools. Krell's shoulders slumped. I need to contact my government. The Vorac cannot sustain these losses. As the commanders dispersed, Vexis remained at the table, watching the human fleet reform. Their ships were broken, battered, barely spaceworthy, yet not a single one showed signs of retreat. She reached for the comms, her voice heavy with reluctant admiration. Federation Central Command to all remaining forces. Cease hostilities. Repeat, cease all hostilities. She took a deep breath. The humans have made their point. The battered remains of the human fleet drifted into Earth's orbit like a pack of wounded wolves returning from the hunt. The USN Defiance listed to port, its starboard thrusters reduced to mangled wreckage. The Scavenger's Pride had lost half its hull plating, exposing skeletal support beams that glowed red hot from re-entry. Yet as the ships limped home, every orbital platform, every satellite, every habitation ring erupted in celebration. Millions of voices roared across the comm channels. Fireworks detonated in the thin upper atmosphere, their colors reflected in the scarred metal of the returning warships. Admiral Ryan Blake stood on the observation deck of the Atlantica's sole remaining hangar bay, watching the planet below through a cracked viewport. His uniform was streaked with coolant fluid, his left arm in a makeshift sling. He smiled. On the surface, the Federation diplomats weren't cheering, they were bowing. A Zephyrian delegation shuttle docked with the Atlantica, its pearlescent hull a stark contrast to the human ships burned. Out armor, High Arbiter Vexis emerged, his four legs moving with uncharacteristic hesitation. The alien's bioluminescent stripes pulsed a nervous violet as he approached Blake. You have done the impossible, Vexis said, his voice modulator struggling with the human language. The Vorac Armada was 10 times your size, their technology superior in every measurable way. Blake turned slowly, wincing as his injured shoulder protested. Measurable, huh? He gestured to the wrecked hangar around them. Maybe you were measuring the wrong things? A team of Zephyrian engineers followed Vexis, their scanning devices chirping frantically as they examined the Atlantica's damaged systems. One particularly young engineer, his carapace still soft with adolescence, stared at a jury-rigged power conduit with something akin to religious awe. This makes no sense, the engineer whispered. The reactor should have breached when the cooling system failed. The power distribution is held together by, is this primitive metallic adhesive? Lisa Hayes stepped out from behind a sparking control panel, her coveralls blackened by soot. She wiped grease from her forehead, leaving a dark streak. Duct tape, she said cheerfully. Humanity's greatest invention. The engineer's mandibles clicked in confusion, but the molecular bonds. Don't think about it too hard, Lisa interrupted, patting the alien on his chitinous shoulder. Just accept that it works. Vexis turned to Blake, his antennae drooping. The Federation Council has voted unanimously. We request access to your ship designs, your tactics. The words seemed to pain him. We were wrong about humanity. Blake exchanged glances with Lisa and Captain Jake Morrison, who had just entered the hangar with a pronounced limp. Morrison's grin was feral. Took you long enough, the captain said, leaning against a half-melted support beam. But sure, we'll share, after all. He gestured to the ruined ships visible through the viewport. We've got plenty of scrap to rebuild from. Down on Earth, the celebrations reached a fever pitch. The orbital feeds showed crowds in every city, waving flags made from salvaged hull plating. Children danced in streets littered with confetti, cut to resemble the jagged shapes of human warships. In the Zephyrian capital, the mood was different. The ruling caste gathered in their crystalline spires, watching the same feeds with a growing sense of dread. Military analysts pored over battle footage, trying to understand how ships held together by hope and rust had defeated the galaxy's finest. Back aboard the Atlantica, Lisa Hayes led the Zephyrian engineers through the wreckage, pointing out innovations hidden beneath the surface grime. See this, she said, tapping a cracked control panel. Looks like a backup sensor array, right? The lead engineer nodded cautiously. Lisa grinned. It is actually 3 different alien systems we salvaged, wired together through a coffee maker. The engineers recoiled. One dropped his scanner. Impossible. Lisa shrugged. Worked, didn't it? We don't care where the parts come from. We care that they do the job. She kicked a loose piece of deck plating, revealing a nest of mismatched wiring beneath. Your ships are perfect. Ours are adaptable. High Arbiter Vexis watched the exchange, his bioluminescence cycling through colors no translator could interpret. Finally, he turned to Admiral Blake. There is a human saying, is there not, about judging books by their covers. Blake nodded, and another one about not bringing a knife to a gunfight. Vexis's antennae twitched. I do not understand. Lisa laughed, slapping the Admiral on his good shoulder. It means we brought the whole damn junkyard. As the celebration continued outside, the human crew and their former enemies stood together in the wreckage of victory. The galaxy would never see scrap the same way again. On the far side of the observation deck, a young communications officer fiddled with the damaged console. Static crackled, then resolved into a transmission from the surface. A child's voice, clear and bright. Welcome home, heroes. Morrison looked at the others, his grin softening. Worth it. The last of the fireworks reflected in the Atlantica's broken viewports, painting the scars of war in fleeting colors. The scrap fleet had returned, and the galaxy would never forget.